Hey folks, it's Vib here with an unscheduled pre-episode message. I apologise for my lousy audio again. It's unclear what's happened, but my recording inputs got messed up these last two episodes. Luckily, I can confirm it is fixed for next episode, which is episode 60. How crazy is that? Please don't let this deter you from listening to the episode. The content is as top-notch as it always is. So sorry about that. It'll be fixed. Thanks for listening, and please do enjoy.
Hello, and welcome to episode 59 of Expertise is Overrated, the podcast that takes the time to answer the questions you didn't know you didn't want the answer to. I'm Sean.
And I'm Vib, and neither of us has any clue what we're talking about.
Which I imagine is especially true for you today, given that you're tripping balls on painkillers.
It's going to be an interesting ride, that's for sure. Yeah. Codeine's great stuff.
It's amazing, isn't it?
You haven't tried. I mean, don't just try, obviously. You have it prescribed for something.
Have a reason to have it.
Exactly, take it when you need to take it. But, yeah, it's good stuff. My reason is that I had surgery on Wednesday.
I do hope you're up to this. I hope you're feeling better as well, but more importantly, I hope you're up to this.
Well, you know, it's easy to bandy words with the witless worm, isn't it?
Okay. That's uncalled for. Apparently codeine just makes you nasty.
I think I was always nasty.
That's just you, isn't it?
I just don't feel the slight sort of pain, the guilt pains that I sometimes get now. So just unleashed.
Oh, dear.
But no, it's okay. I mean, what I don't recommend to people is when you're going to have... I mean, it was... I don't know what the cutoff between minor and major surgeries, but...
You were under general anaesthetic.
Yeah,
I think
under general.
Makes it major.
But it was just a keyhole surgery on my shoulder, so it's nothing like... Not open heart or anything like that. But yeah, in any case, don't go to a wedding like 3 days later. It's not
Did you just
ideal.
fall asleep in the corner?
I actually made it through the entire thing, but there was definitely a moment in like the service. So actually in the church, the first time we had to stand up, I sat down again and I broke into this like just unbelievable sweat that I can't really explain. I think my body was just all of a sudden like, whoa, what are we doing?
We're not doing standing up and sitting down quite that quickly.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
So it must have looked like I was dying, but luckily, obviously, people were paying attention to the bride and the groom. So it's good.
Yeah, it would have been a bad sign at the wedding if everyone noticed that you were sweating in church.
Yeah,
that's what it was. You were in a church. That's why you were sweating.
Yeah. The flames nearly sort of came, and I burst into them. That's good sentence structure, isn't it? Gosh, a sign of things to come. I'm sure.
Dear.
But no, other than that, it was actually all right. It turns out that getting to like tiny places in Kent is not easy.
No,
especially when you live in Oxford.
Yeah, it's a long way.
And you know what? Like when you're visiting the countryside, and you don't have a car. Like cab drivers they're like, no, it's a Sunday, mate. We're not going to work. You know, fair enough, I suppose, but it is quite annoying.
You get very used to, especially living in London, you get very used to just how good things like Uber or Halo are. And then I was trying to get a taxi from the station to my house, and I was trying to pre-book it like a week in advance on a Sunday evening, and everyone who I was phoning was just like, no, I don't work Sundays.
Yeah.
It's
like, crazy, isn't it?
Okay, fair. Like, I'm not expecting... You don't have to work 7 days a week, but like...
But equally, like, someone in the business must... must be driving.
Surely someone will take my money to do their job. I got it in the end, but it was very...
That's the thing, like, you'll find it, but it just takes some digging, doesn't it? You're right, like, London really spoils a person. Like, you can just Uber anywhere at any time. It'll cost a fortune, but...
Time.
You know.
And then you can also... When you get to wherever you're going, you can Deliveroo any type of cuisine you can think of.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it spoils man.
It's crazy. Like until you move out. I mean, because I live in Oxford now, which is not a big city. It's also not a tiny little village, right? And so Uber doesn't exist.
No, that's a proper city. No,
Yeah.
is there no Uber?
No, Uber doesn't exist. You're
That's
entirely
amazing.
reliant on the 2 cab companies in this town. And there's all sorts of weird shit, like sort of pre-clear a payment that's more than your fare is going to be, and like, yeah,
That's students for you, mate. That's exactly what that is.
yeah, almost certainly.
We're not taking students, or if we are taking students, we're taking the soiling fine out before we do the journey.
Oh, it reminds me of the time the police dropped off my housemate in third year.
That's
anyway.
always a highlight.
Yeah, students drink alcohol. Students are crazy.
Yeah,
makes sense, I guess, that there's no Uber.
no, that's a fair point. I was once asked. I accidentally stumbled into the wrong staircase one evening. So this is just a massive segue, but I ended up having to talk to one of the college deans about it, and he was like, "Do you know what happened?" And I was like, "It was a Wednesday night. I drank too much. Like, this isn't a welfare incident. Like, I shouldn't have done it, and I'm sorry. But like, you're looking at me with concern. Do you know what happens in your college?"
Yeah, I mean, it will have been like one of the club nights. I can't remember what Wednesdays were, but there's always some club night.
Yeah, there's no mystery here.
Yeah.
So.
Like, no one had to call an ambulance. It's fine in the grand scheme of things.
Fine. Anyway.
So yeah. Aside from that, I've survived. I'm okay. I've only got one arm, and it's my non-dominant arm, which is always fun.
Teach yourself to be ambidextrous.
You know what? Brushing teeth has been an interesting experience. Like, it sounds like such a small thing that you take for granted, but it's surprisingly difficult with a non-dominant hand.
Things that you don't realise you're going to struggle with. That's quite funny. The good side, though, and if there is a positive side, is you've got lots of time off during which you can play the subject of today's conversation.
Indeed. I tried a little bit earlier. I plugged my ancient laptop into my very modern TV, and it did run. I think there was a bit of input lag, so I'm not sure that that's going to be the way forward. But even just holding a controller is challenging. I definitely can't use a mouse and keyboard.
No.
The controller was it sort of works. So yeah, I'll be playing a lot of Baldur's Gate 3 over coming weeks, I'm sure.
As far as I can tell, you and everyone else in the world.
Well, that's demonstrably untrue. It's only being played by less than 1 million players at a time.
I think, we obviously we're talking about Baldur's Gate 3. I think both of us have been looking forward to this game.
Yes,
but as I think, this is sort of where I want to spend quite a lot of time. Like, I've vaguely been looking forward to Baldur's Gate 3 in the same way that I was vaguely looking forward to Diablo 4, but I've not actually played any Diablo 4. Even though the Diablo games had a much bigger impact on my childhood than the Baldur's Gate games did. But it just seems to have completely taken over everything.
Yeah. And so for a lot of people, it's a nostalgia factor, right? Because Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 2.
Is it?
They're popular with people. I never played, so I don't know. And I wasn't really planning on getting Baldur's Gate 3, to be honest with you. Primarily because it's Larian and they made Divinity Original Sin, which is a game that was so annoyingly difficult that it broke me and my friend. So
I want to challenge this question of nostalgia, though. We can come on to it, but just I want to get my marker down now that I want to challenge the nostalgia point.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I can't argue it because it's not nostalgia for me at all. But ultimately, I'm just trying to think what actually convinced me to get Baldur's Gate 3 in the end. I think it might have just been the hype.
It was the hype, and also I said, "Hey, we could stream this."
Yes, and then we played an hour, and that's now like 3 weeks ago.
We've both played it since then as well. We just don't stream very often.
Well, you've played maybe a total of, 3 hours?
Shush. £50 well spent. Leave me alone.
£50 well spent. Whereas, let's see, how many hours have I actually got in the game already? Quite an embarrassing number. 25.7 hours. I mean, that's It's a lot. But it's not like some people.
So my one of my good friends that we both do D&D with, I was speaking to him at the weekend. He's got 90 hours in it, and he has a full-time job.
Wow, there you go. 90 hours. His wife will be pleased, I'm sure.
She's on holiday.
There we go. There we go. That's lucky.
Yeah, he's like, it's been a perfect storm.
But so I think you've hit the nail on the head there. D&D, which is obviously what, for those of you who don't know what Baldur's Gate is,
yeah, so
it's essentially a video game based on Dungeons and Dragons, the tabletop RPG.
Yeah, I think it's to say it's based on D&D is almost doing it a bit of a disservice, because there are D&D games out there already. Baldur's Gate 3 is as close to a perfect transposition of the rules of 5th edition of D&D as it is possible to get, as far as I can tell.
It is essentially video game 5th edition.
It's literally the fifth edition video game, complete with skill checks. You actually roll a dice.
Yeah,
it
rolls them in the background as well for like passive things.
Yeah, if it's always rolling dice, but if you are faced with when you've got speech checks or what have you, that you get them in most RPGs, and it tells you, Speechcraft 20 or whatever. In Baldur's Gate 3, you click on that, and then a D20 appears on your screen, and it shows you all your modifiers, and it tells you what number you have to hit, and you actually click the dice and roll it.
Yes. And someone in your party can cast guidance, and you get a D4 and stuff.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It's super satisfying just rolling the die, not going to lie. Until I rolled one check with advantage, and I rolled a 1 and a 2.
But that's also true to the tabletop.
It is. But it's just So we can talk about karmic dice at some point, I guess.
I think we should talk about karmic dice. I think that's a really good place to go. But we should, I think, just throw some of the statistics around quickly. So it has the 9th highest concurrent number of players on Steam ever. So at its peak, 875,000 people were playing Baldur's Gate 3, which is an insane number.
Yeah.
It's the 9th highest peak.
For an RPG as well. I put that. I don't know if you have those numbers for like concurrent RPG players.
I don't have them specifically for RPGs, but I can tell you that the absolute peak is PlayerUnknown Battleground.
Yeah, I find that ridiculous.
With, what was it, about 3 million?
Like that. I don't know. I've never understood the hype of that game.
No, me neither.
I guess it was one of the original like battle royales, perhaps, but
yeah,
I don't know. It just looked a bit bland and a buggy mess, and I guess bugs are a thing we'll be talking about at some point.
I think we absolutely will. But to put it into context, so Valheim, which we've discussed before, has a peak of 500,000.
Does it actually? That's really impressive.
Yeah, its all-time peak was 500,000.
For an early access game.
GTA 5, 364,000. Skyrim, 287,000. So what this doesn't tell you is about a game's longevity, right? So Skyrim still has... I've lost it already.
Yeah, Skyrim keeps getting played and released and played.
GTA 4 in the last 24 hours had 140,000 people playing it, and currently there's 100,000 people playing Skyrim.
Yeah.
Not Skyrim, GTA 5. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, GTA is just the game that will never die.
To contrast with Cyberpunk 2077, which had an all-time peak of 1 million people and a 24-hour peak of 27,000. And currently there are 20,000 people playing Cyberpunk. There are 10,000 people playing Hogwarts Legacy.
Oh, that's dropped off.
Wow. Hogwarts Legacy had a peak of 879,000, so it's next on the list ahead of Baldur's Gate. But like these swings are huge for some games.
Yeah, so well done to Baldur's Gate. I mean, that's really impressive.
I cannot find... I'm going to see if I can find something like Pillars of Eternity. Actually, I find Divinity. Divinity Original Sin 2.
That'll be a lot less, I suspect.
It's got to be a lot less, but there's currently 10,000 people playing Divinity Original Sin 2 with a all-time peak of less than 100,000.
Yeah, and I bet the peak now might well be as a result of Baldur's Gate 3 being released.
Yeah, how many people are jumping back into Larian games?
Yeah, more polished and finished Larian games, I guess. So,
yeah.
So let's maybe talk about the bugs, because I saw that you wrote it in our little notes document.
Well,
and I was surprised because I've not really seen anything about it. I've not really encountered any bugs myself, except when we streamed and one of the cutscenes, my character just T-posed.
Bug.
But since then, I've not really encountered anything that I've noticed to be buggy anyway. But yeah, when you Google it, it is actually quite a thing.
This was a conversation I was having with the same friend I spoke about earlier. So he works for a video game company, as you know, and they frequently put out video games, and they get absolutely castigated for their games having bugs in them. But he was making the point that Baldur's Gate 3 has at least as many bugs in it as any other game that's on the market at the moment. If you look at how it launched, it didn't launch, particularly the late stages, those bits of the game that weren't in early access. It didn't launch in a very good state.
Yeah, that seems to be it, right? Yeah, it's later on in the game, yeah. Which
of course.
It's an argument for early access.
It's a strong argument for early access, but it's also making the point that companies know where most people spend most of the time, and they front load their bug testing and their QA in the bits where they know people will spend their time, which I think again makes sense.
So there's a lot of arguments here, I think, right? So there's been a lot of talk about game developers being a little bit miffed at how well received Baldur's Gate 3 is, and how epic it is. Because I mean, it's hard for me to judge because I relatively just started playing the game, but it's something like at least 100 hours to just finish the main story quests, and there's infinite replayability because it's 5th edition, so you can create lots of different characters, different classes. You can interact with different characters. You can play them all different ways. And you get different outcomes off the back of that, obviously, because you're rolling dice. Different outcomes happen regardless of how well you try, I suppose. So I think in terms of scope, this game is probably quite a bit bigger than what we're used to, and for that, I think it's very polished.
It's entirely possible for a game to be both very polished and buggy. Like, the bigger the game is, the more polished it can be, and the more bugs there can be if you find it.
Yeah.
If you find them, you see what I mean?
Yeah, because I mean, it certainly doesn't seem to have the Cyberpunk problem, right? Which was buggy right from the start, and just really comical bugs, I think.
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate had a little bit of that, and a little bit of a nudity issue with certain character types, I think. But
yeah, it did have some funny nudity problems, which I like that.
Yeah, it's funny, and I think no one launches a game anymore that's bug free. But Cyberpunk, I think, got a lot of flack because it was almost broken, as in it was essentially unplayable in the first release, no matter what system you had. So they had to fix that. Baldur's Gate 3 at least these runs, and then there's other arguments, I think, in terms of I guess one that's in the media at the moment is Creative Assembly's coming DLC for Warhammer 3, right?
Yeah.
Warhammer 3.
So that's a contrast that I think is really interesting to pick at a little.
Yeah, the problem, I think, in a nutshell with that is that that's the DLC for a game that came out, last year? A year and a half ago?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's that game is still buggy. And that game is essentially an iteration of 2 games that came before it. And as a consumer, it's really hard to see past that, right? I'm sure as a developer, you're like, actually the code is very different and whatnot. But, as a consumer, you're like, yeah, well, you have had a decade now to make this a seamless experience, and it isn't. And now you're releasing a DLC to a game that's still buggy, the bugs that people have been quite vocal about. The DLC undoubtedly will have bugs. In fact, I saw Lionheart play as the Changeling in that game, and just one of the tool tips for one of the weapons was just flickering. It's like, press release and all. It's like, this is just unacceptable levels of chicanery from from CA in some ways. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's wrong or right to prefer one over the other, but I do think that there are companies who seem to just double down on issues and make misguided press releases and statements that angers the crown even more. Whereas other developers like Larian seem to just kind of get on with it, if that makes sense.
There's so much to unpack in what you've just said. I'm sort of struggling to work out where to start. I think...
Are you saying my thoughts aren't particularly linear?
No, I think it was a perfectly coherent and linear statement. It was just incredibly dense. Like, there was so much in what you said. It's trying to work out which of the threads to pull out first. So...
I also want to make clear, I'm not having a go at CA, for example. I think they make fantastic games. But it is just indicative of the times that a fantastic game is one that contains lots of bugs, which I'm sure we've talked about in the past.
We've made the point before that video games now are just bigger and more complicated than the video games of our childhoods.
Absolutely.
And those were bug-riddled messes as well. This idea that you used to buy a video game and that was it, it was complete, is just nonsense. I'm sorry if you think that's the way video games used to work. You've never seen someone speedrun Doom by clipping through walls.
Yeah, well, that was a design feature.
It's been rebranded as a design.
They're like,
feature.
We know that in 2 decades' time there'll be this platform called Twitch, and it'll be someone's career to speedrun Doom using the buggy code we've got.
But that's my point, right? You bought the Doom disc and you could do that, and the difference was fundamentally everyone was less connected, so there wasn't this conversation about how buggy things were. But I mean, you're about my age. You bumped into Missing Go in Pokemon Red and Blue.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah. Of course, it's like the only way to catch Mew.
That's not a game feature.
No.
That is the game not working as intended. It's a bug. And there was all sorts of stuff in, you can clone items because the one on the 6th line won't if you do this. Yeah, but you're exploiting a flaw in the game in order to do that. That's not a feature. You're not clever. Well, you are clever because you found it out. But anyway.
But I think this is where there is a distinction to be made, right? And so this is, I guess we're both present on some Discord that like Total War as a game series. And so perhaps we're closer to that than most. But people get really angry at CA for releasing yet another broken game and it's unplayable. But actually the bugs in Total War Warhammer 3 are not game breaking in any way. They're just a bit annoying sometimes, and it's sort of like, how did you break this? Whereas again, like Cyberpunk released and was unplayable. Jedi Survivor was released and was unplayable for a lot of people. That is shocking.
Yeah, and there's buggy and then there's unoptimized as well, and those are different things.
Yeah.
Again, Cyberpunk was both. As you say, it was just completely unplayable. Jedi Survivor, I didn't have any problems with, but I was playing it on a PS5, so that's like, it was absolutely optimized for a PS5. It wasn't optimized for anything else, as far as I can.
So when you boot up your massive 4090, it's like, oh, the game won't run.
Yeah, but I mean, Total War. I really don't know where I stand on the current state of... Well, no, I do. That's not fair. I do know exactly where I stand. I think Shadows have changed, the latest DLC. So this is where all the furore, for people who haven't been following it, is that Creative Assembly have put up the price of their DLCs.
From the usual 15 quid to 20 quid, is that right?
It's something like that. It might be 25. It might be 20 to 25. It's that sort of ballpark. It's gone up by a decent percentage, probably gone up by about 20%. And the big argument seems to be, we're getting less content for that. But like, okay, don't buy it then. This is where I really, really struggle. So if you don't think that the value for money on Shadows of Change is there, don't buy it. There's no obligation to buy it. But you also then can't expect CA to continue to support a game that people aren't buying content for, because that's not how video games work anymore. If you want regular patches, then there needs to be an income stream. That income stream is DLCs. people's salaries are more expensive. CA's gas and electricity and internet is more expensive than it used to be, so they've got to find that money from somewhere. Plus, and this is, I think, where the Larian conversation comes back, CA have a publisher that will be demanding a take. Sega will be demanding an amount of money that projects have to make, or they're branded a failure.
Yeah.
I don't know what that percentage is, but it's
I think
there.
There's a bigger episode here, I think. 'Cause this is quite commonly the issue now with games being released in unfit states, and it's the developer versus the publisher, right? That seems to be a bit of an issue.
Larian benefits from not having a publisher. It just does. There's no argument to be made there. It just does.
Of course, because they're only beholden to themselves. And I guess Wizards of the Coast to an extent, but I don't know if they're really involved in that.
That's a content license. That's all that is.
Yeah.
What Seal say? Don't make a shit game. That's it.
Yeah.
Don't do anything that don't make it easy for players to play Nazis.
Yeah.
Don't have that be a choice that players can make. That's the way Wizards will have gone.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's no Hasbro sort of saying it needs to be published now.
No.
Get on with it. Creative Assembly does have that issue with the Total War series for sure. And I'm for once completely in agreement with you. Like, yes, they've upped the prices. Everything is more expensive. There's a cost of living crisis. If you can't afford it, unfortunately, that's just the way it is. I won't be able to afford the Total War DLC for a while. 20 quid's a lot of money. Because there's other things potentially more worth buying at this point. But equally, if I was a massive fan of the content, would that be a deal breaker? I don't think so.
Well, this is the other point, right? You and neither, we were saying this a while ago, neither you nor I had actually played Warhammer 3 in a very long time. So I'm not looking, more content for Warhammer 3. There's loads of content in Warhammer 3 I've still got to experience.
It's the issue with it. Like, it was overwhelming amounts of content. Yeah. Like, I was thinking that when I was watching Lionheart's video. Put another character in the fucking Empire. Like, come on, it's getting so busy everywhere.
Yeah.
You can't throw a rock with a legendary lord. It's getting a bit crazy at this point.
I think that is a real problem, actually. But that's a
separate argument
for another day.
But it's things get more expensive. They're not. It's not like they're breaking market trends or market pricing by what they're doing. It's just, sadly, it is what it is. There will be a sale. Things will go down in price at some point. Any Nintendo game you buy, or any PlayStation game you buy through the official stores, are really fucking expensive. We're not here complaining about that.
I paid 60 or 70 quid for Jedi Survivor.
Yeah.
On PS5. It was an insane amount of money. But this is the thing, right? So, in a way, I think it gets missed a little bit in some of these conversations. People go, oh my God, I can buy 10 Happy Meals for the price of a DLC. I'm like, yeah, because it's a luxury product. You said this, and I think it's a really, really important point. Video games, broadly speaking, are a luxury product.
Yes. Yes, and this player entitlement drives me nuts. Like people saying, "Oh, CA, blah blah blah."
So why don't we care about it with Larian? That's what I want to pull it back to, because I know you and I could probably talk about Shadows of Change for an hour.
Yeah. So Baldur's Gate 3, it's a game that costs 50 quid on Steam.
That's a lot of money.
But I know that's already going to be more expensive on PlayStation, ironically, because Monopoly of that.
I did look at it, and it is going to be more expensive on PlayStation.
It's going to be 57 or something, isn't it?
Something like that, yeah.
It's just bizarre. Anyway, the 50 quid, which I think actually, as you said, it's a lot of money, make no mistake. That is a huge amount of money. But it's actually on the cheaper end, I think, of video games in the modern day, which is nuts to say. Not including indie games, because they vary. They vary wildly.
But I've seen this debate about Baldur's Gate as well. Is Baldur's Gate an indie game?
I don't think so.
Because I've seen arguments that it's indie, and I've seen arguments that it's AAA.
I don't think it's AAA. There's got to be a middle ground between AAA and indie, surely.
Sure, I think there's got to be as well. But
again, not to bring up Creative Assembly, but that's not a AAA studio. It's also not an indie studio.
It's the largest video game studio in the UK.
Yeah,
they're pretty close to. If
they're like AA, give it AA status.
AA or premium, maybe.
Premium. They're like
Or-
there's a whole host of video game development studios that are proper studios, but not like indie. Right? I think indie to me is like three guys on a
Yeah.
brick.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's fair, but
part of it is polish, part of it is finish. There's a question of aesthetics as well. Like, there's so
it's three guys playing around on Unity. Ultimately, that's what an indie game is to me.
or like Factorio,
Yeah,
maybe. But the
good games, make no mistake.
The problem with either AAA or indie or any of these labels is they only have meaning to the person saying them.
Yes.
So one person can call Baldur's Gate 3 AAA because they're looking at the graphics, they're looking at the number of players, they're looking at the level of marketing, and someone else is looking at the fact that it doesn't have a publisher, and so that makes it indie. So
yeah, that's possibly true. Yeah, I think to me AAA at the moment it's studios like EA and Ubisoft, right? They're just
FIFA,
studios who make games multiple times a year.
I think to be AAA as well, you broadly have to be part of a franchise.
Yeah.
Not always, but it's got to be. Yeah, I think you're right. It's your EAs, it's your Ubisoft.
I'm actually saying that now. Then what does that make Bethesda? They make a game every 50 years. That's
Actable is probably making AAA again. Like COD is AAA. It just is.
Yeah.
But that's the question: is Starfield AAA?
Yeah. Good question, right?
Or is there another category? Because AAA is also often used quite condescendingly.
It is now. That's the thing, right? So your AAA games are, as you said, FIFA. It comes out every year. It's the same pile of shit every year. They're somehow making it worse every year, and it gets more and more expensive.
Yeah,
that is what for me sums up AAA games in the modern era. So it's refreshing that a company like Larian came in and actually produced what looks like a very good game. Quite different, no microtransactions. It's a set price. They're supporting it clearly.
we're not going to get any DLC though. Apparently, I want DLC because it only goes up to level 12.
Yeah, I did wonder about that, but
we're definitely going to get DLC. Like, it's just they'd be insane not to, given how successful it's been. I think what they actually mean is we aren't currently making a DLC. We've put all of our development effort into building and then supporting Baldur's Gate 3, and then once we've had our massive launch party, we'll see what we can do about some DLC, I think.
Yeah, but equally, I don't see why every game needs DLC these days, you know?
Because I want to play at level 20.
And of course, no, same, but I'm guessing that from their point of view, they've tried to tell a story, and if the story's over, and if you were at level 20 when, then it's just too easy, perhaps, I don't know. So,
yeah, they'd have to make the game bigger. They'd have to do a proper expansion, but that's what the old Baldur's Gate games had.
Yeah, but if they want to do that, then I'm sure they will.
Yeah. I think we'll get one.
Given the success it's had so far, I suspect it would make sense.
And I don't think we can understate that success. We've made a point of it earlier, but like, this is a party-based computer role-playing game. Its success is almost entirely unprecedented. It's unbelievable. I can't get my head around it.
But for what is effectively point and click, multiplayer, turn-based RPG. It's got that sort of RPG jank in it still.
It's very janky.
But it's all part of the charm. It just works so well.
It does just work so well. So, what's driving it? You mentioned D&D earlier. I think that's right. I think that's got to be playing a huge part in it.
I always struggle with that because I find it really hard to conceptualize how popular D&D is.
So I think that's a really interesting question. We've had this conversation before, I think.
Yeah.
I think on air.
Yeah.
But D&D is simultaneously the most popular it has ever been, and proportionally about as popular as it's ever been. But the population has gone up, so there are more people playing D&D. But it's not that much bigger.
Yeah.
What I think probably is a little bit bigger is the number of people consuming D&D or D&D equivalents.
You think?
Well, about 1 million people watch Critical Role.
Yeah, but would that be non-D&D players? You think?
So this is the thing I don't know. I think there are people, I don't know how many, but I think there are people whose only relationship until Baldur's Gate 3 with D&D was consuming Critical Role, High Rollers, Acquisitions Incorporated, etc.
Yeah.
I think. I don't know if it's
Possibly.
50% of the people who watch Critical Role or 0.5%.
Yeah. The other issue is that does Baldur's Gate 3 make it like super obvious that it's 5th edition? The video game?
I don't know.
We obviously know that.
We knew. But it's also...
I don't know. Let me get to the store page real quick and see. Real quick, he said. Baldur's Gate 3 is a story-rich, party-based RPG set in the universe of Dungeons and Dragons, where you chose to shape a tale of fellowship and betrayal, survival and sacrifice, and deliver up to power. So
quite
it's pretty upfront.
If I were to Google D&D video game, do you reckon Baldur's Gate 3 comes up as your first choice? I think it must do.
Almost certainly.
So, that'll be playing into it a little bit.
Yeah, but it's hard to gauge, isn't it? I know the vast majority of people I know that are playing Baldur's Gate 3 or want to are D&D players, but then there are a few who are not. And this comes back to that nostalgia. Some people are just nostalgic for the original Baldur's Gates. But as I said before, I can't relate to that. So.
Or are they? The Baldur's Gate 2 was released in the year 2000.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it's faux nostalgia.
Possibly.
Which is the thing that I've spoken about. This episode is full of just stuff we've spoken about before, but looked at in a little bit more detail. I think there's a load of people who are nostalgic for Baldur's Gate 2 who never actually played Baldur's Gate 2 or didn't play it until they were much older.
Yeah, so you might be entirely right. You might be entirely wrong. I literally couldn't tell you.
I've got no evidence for that other than just generally that's the way nostalgia is going. People are nostalgic for things they didn't experience. They're nostalgic for the idea of things.
Yeah. Like, I'm sure that there is a subset of I guess, older players, right? Because if Baldur's Gate 2 came out in 2000, then Baldur's Gate must be mid-90s at best. Which would be before my time to be playing video games like that.
1998.
I'm not even convinced we had a computer then that would have run video games.
We did. I don't know. That's around about the same time as Diablo, isn't it?
Probably, yeah. I definitely remember having a PlayStation, but I didn't really have like a PC for computer games.
The original, Diablo 2 was 2000, so the original Diablo would have been about...
yeah, pretty much 98 again, 97.
98 again. 96, so it was longer between Diablo. Longer, yeah. But it's all that sort of era.
Yeah, so I think if people of our age, that might well be, as you say, faux nostalgia. Well, even if you played it when you were 14, that's like one of the first games you played.
Yeah, so I think in a sense, like I think you and I, or people of our age, might be nostalgia for Diablo 2, Baldur's Gate 2. We played them a couple of years after they came out because there wasn't this rapid release of video games then either. They didn't come out. There weren't that many coming out.
And you sort of had to pay attention,
all at the same time.
You had to buy the magazines, or
and they were more expensive. Relatively, they were more expensive. Partly because we were kids, so we had less disposable income, but also just video games actually are cheaper now than they've ever been, even though they feel more expensive because they're like 60 quid. Inflation means that, broadly speaking, video games are more expensive now than they've ever been. Well, sorry, cheaper now than they've ever been.
I remember, like, one of the first games that I would have probably bought was Metal Gear Solid 2. That must have cost 40 quid, at the time. PlayStation 2 game, yeah.
Probably
45 pounds, yeah.
That's probably
so
about
50 quid
right.
now, yeah, it's a good deal.
That's the thing. It feels more. but it's not actually.
So there's a take there that video games are no longer as luxury as we claimed earlier.
No, they are. It's just luxury is more generally accessible
Potentially
to the average punter because everyone's got a £1,000 phone in their pocket. This is
very true. Yeah,
they
can play video games like
Diablo.
Diablo, exactly.
You can play Diablo 3 on a phone. Luxury is more readily within the grasp of the average consumer now than it has ever been. It just is. There's no real argument to be had there.
Yes and no. I mean, housing crisis aside, but that's like an incredible expense.
Yeah, housing crisis aside, I grant you, but like,
but no, you're right. I think people have more. Or people are spending. Is that true? I don't actually know. People who are struggling are obviously struggling, but I think, as you say, your sort of average middle of the middle is probably spending more on video games now than they were.
I'm not saying that people aren't struggling. I never say that. People absolutely are, and people who are have my sympathy. But as a proportion of wages, the cost of luxury items now is broadly low. The cost of your average luxury item now is lower than it was 20 years ago. That's just true.
I think I agree. Yeah. It's saying that without sort of saying no one's not well off because you said
those two.
The whole population has shifted, right? So struggle now is not the same as struggle was 40 years ago. And the average is not the same as the average was 40 years ago. So.
We should also make the case that this is specifically true of the UK.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't want to speak for anything else.
Wouldn't want to speak for anything else, but specifically in the
EU.
UK. Yeah. But, so...
I don't even know how we got to this. But for 50 quid, yeah, for a game that is ultimately okay. But yeah, obviously bugs in the later acts seems to be a thing, but I haven't got there yet. So we mentioned it briefly then. Early access. Do we think that was a success?
I think it's a crowning example of the success of the early access model.
Yeah.
Because it was only Act 1 that was in early access.
Yeah.
Act 1 seems to be the most stable, the least buggy.
Yeah, and apparently they did take feedback on board and stuff.
So I think it's just, we had an enormous Act 1 playtest for 3 years. Turns out if you got that much feedback, you can actually just iron out most of your bugs.
Yeah, apparently so.
It's sort of, in a way, making me rethink my views on early access, because I sort of famously don't like early access as a model. I think it.
Yeah, well, neither one of us really.
Weird.
But I think again, it's just because this game studio actually did it right, whereas there's others who did it wrong. I mean, in our early access episode, we mentioned some absolutely corking examples of how companies get it wrong and essentially extort customers. But then there are your Baldur's Gate 3s, your Valheims, your Kerbal Space programs who do it justice, I guess. The issue, I think, still is one of price, because neither you or I bought Baldur's Gate 3 in early access because it was still 50 quid, and we were like, that's a bit steep for an early access title.
It was 50 quid for Act 1 was too much.
Yeah.
I made that decision. It was too much.
But I guess some people sort of looked at it and said, yeah, but I'm getting the full game for this, just not yet.
But they then waited 3 years, during which time Larian got to play with their 50 quid. No, the argument from Larian would be without that revenue stream, we would have never finished the game.
Exactly, yeah. Or it would have taken 5 years or something.
Or we'd have had to get a publisher.
Yeah.
Is probably where Larian would go. That's the only way we were able to fund it without a publisher. I don't know if that's actually true, but certainly it's the argument I'd be making.
Oh, it's an argument that makes sense, yeah.
Does it mean that early access works, or does it mean that
yeah,
people publishers or investors should be more willing to fund risky games. Because Baldur Gate 3 was risky.
Right.
875,000 concurrent players must have been at the far end of their bell curve in terms of expectations.
I don't want to speak for them, but yeah, you would think so. Right?
Yeah, I'm speaking hyperbolically. I have absolutely no idea what their expectations were, but like the 9th highest all-time peak of all time, people in the opening weekend, people played a combined 1,225 years of Baldur's Gate 3 in 3 days.
Yeah, because I like that because they jokingly quipped it. That's about as long as it took them to make.
Yeah, it accounted for 28% of all people playing on Steam on the Sunday of its launch weekend.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's what?
That's crazy.
They would have been insane for that to be a projection. Maybe, best case scenario, we get something like that, but you can't budget on that basis.
No, and this has come not that long after the release of the Dungeons and Dragons movie, which didn't do that well. Yeah.
Was it an actual flop, or was it just not a very big success?
I want to say Middle Lost. Hang on. That's actually kind of interesting. You haven't seen it. Why have you not seen it?
I don't care about a Dungeons and Dragons movie.
It's just a good film. If you called it anything other than Dungeons and Dragons, it's just a great fantasy film.
Maybe that's the answer.
Yeah, so they had a budget of 150 million, made 208 at box office.
That's a loss. That's a loss because budgets don't tend to include marketing.
Yeah.
So that film made a loss, which But
so if you're Larry and you're like, oh, well, shit, if like a Hollywood blockbuster doesn't do well in the same sort of sphere.
What do you always say is the biggest draw of a tabletop role-playing game? It makes me cringe every time you say it.
The fact that I can criticize the GM.
Okay, now you're just trying to be clever.
No, player choice, of course. It's players telling a story.
Player choice, players telling a story, the absolute creative freedom to do whatever you want. Yeah. Don't get that in a video game. So all of those idiots out there who think like you do, they're going to see... So you don't get that in a movie, but you do, and that is a huge thing that Larian were pushing in their marketing. You do sort of get that in a video game.
Yes.
When you rescue, or don't, as the case may be, your first companion on the Nautiloid, there's absolutely nothing stopping you from just killing her, or saving her, or not engaging with her, or like, your freedom of choice there is huge.
Exactly.
Whereas watching a film, and this is part of why I'm not interested in the D&D film, I don't think. Watching the film, I'm just watching someone else's game of Dungeons and Dragons. And I don't like doing that. I don't like Critical Role for that reason. It's not interesting to me.
But I think you've got the wrong end of the stick for that film. And that's why I think maybe the name hasn't helped in that case.
That goes back to
it's just
your
a
point.
really interesting fantasy.
It's
just a good fantasy film, honestly, and we haven't had any of those in a long time.
No. No, that's very
true. Yeah, if you're thinking about it like, oh, I'd rather be playing, then no, that's obviously not true. But it's just, it's hard to explain. You should watch it.
No, I'm sure when I see it on a streaming service, I'll probably watch it on a train at some point. But
Baldur's Gate 3 does absolutely give you the thing that defines 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, which is player choice. Yeah.
So from that perspective, that's probably a huge source of its success.
But, and this is something we've talked about offline, is what makes it really work in tabletop D&D is there's discourse and dialogue, right? Because you have the GM who's sort of trying to guide the story in a particular way. And you have players who imagine something. Players. Yeah, so a player thinks, oh, if I do this, that would be quite cool. But you can sort of... Because there's discourse, right, you can sort of say, oh, if I do this, like, you can ask questions around it, like, etc.,
a
etc.
player can always ask the "Is it possible for me to?" question.
But not even so much the "Is it possible to?" You know, that's a boring question, but it's the sort of you can understand nuance a whole lot better, right? And if I say something in character,
Oh yeah,
if you don't understand necessarily what I mean, like I can clarify that, right? The issue in Baldur's Gate 3 is because it's a video game, so you get a set number of dialogue options. And I've had this where I clicked on one that was like, oh, that seems to be what I want it to be, and then it just came out so much more aggressive, and like events ensued. And you're like, well, you know, if I'd known that corresponded to that thing that my character then said, that's tricky, I find.
Well, I haven't actually used this dialogue option because I only ever play Goody Two Shoes, but it happens right at the start, doesn't it? When you rescue, well, spoilers for the first hour of Baldur's Gate 3 to follow, but when you rescue Shadowheart on the Nautiloid, she sort of remarks on the fact that you have a Gith with you. And one of your dialogue options is, do you have a problem with Gith? No, I've never clicked on that. But that could be is there some interesting backstory here between you and Gith that I need to know about? Or it could be...
Yeah. Fight me.
Well, fuck you.
Yeah. Fight me now.
Yes, I do have a Gith. Let's have a fight. And it's like, well, those are two hugely different ways of asking the same question. And
obviously this is all a matter of how one perceives it, right? But with that question, it sounds inherently inflammatory, and that's how I would sort of interpret. That's why I wouldn't click on it. I've seen people do it, and ultimately all that she says is apparently not as much as the Gith hit everyone else. And then we just move on with our lives.
it's not actually a problem there.
Yeah, but so that's exactly the sort of thing I ran into. Like, you know, if the writers wrote a dialogue option and then interpreted it pretty differently to how I interpret it, then that can lead to some unexpected outcomes. And this is where save scumming comes in. It's a big topic.
This is. I've said this a few times. I'm afraid it's not an original thought, and full credit has to go to. I'm going to get your Discord handle here right. Arthur the Amethyst on a Discord server that I'm in, who has come out with the hot take that because save scumming is possible in Baldur's Gate 3, it's not a true role-playing game.
Yeah, I mean, he's wrong on so many levels.
Is he, though?
Of course. Because this is what I mean when I say that when you're playing a tabletop RPG with a GM, you're save scumming ahead of the fact. Because you can clarify what the outcome is going to be.
No, you
can't.
It's
all sensible. Of course you can.
No.
Of course you can't.
Of course you can. That's a ridiculous statement.
Literally the other day, many moons ago, when you ran a game, you more or less said, "Oh, if you do this to this character, you will all die." Right? That's safe coming ahead of time. That's safe coming ahead of the fact. Of course.
No. This was me giving you all information that your characters would have been able to perceive, and you can't because you're not your characters. So I'm the only conduit of information to you. That's not saves coming ahead of time.
It comes down to it.
No, that's just a willful misunderstanding of both what happened there and the term saves coming.
No, but your Discord friend doesn't understand what role-playing really is. Or that every video game is a role-playing game.
There it is. I was waiting for that.
Or the fact that, if you want to save scum. It doesn't matter to anyone, literally.
I don't. He doesn't have he would not have a problem with people save scumming in Baldur's Gate 3. He would be fully on board with people playing the video game however they want to.
No. He's confusing role playing with there is a set outcome, which is the mistake that you always make when it comes to D&D as well.
No,
there is only one road.
No. That's one, rude, and two, that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is, if you get to keep trying until you get the outcome that you desire, you are not living with your character's choices.
No, you're just trying to understand what the choice is that your character wants to make.
No.
Let me guess, he's a GM.
Yes.
Yeah. You can always tell, because they don't understand fun. And fundamentally, GMs don't actually seem to understand how to play Dungeons and Dragons.
That's such a wild accusation. What do you possibly mean by that?
Because the GMs always seem to put themselves into like conflict with players.
No, I don't think
that's what I mean with
the
sort of there's only one road. Actually, there's many roads, and the whole party decides what the road is. And yes, you have to live with your consequences for sure.
No,
the problem in Baldur's Gate 3 is that you're playing, like, you're sort of playing 4 characters at once if you're not necessarily playing multiplayer, which I think is the way to experience the game. Ultimately,
a good GM doesn't think that there's only one road. A good GM presents a situation to the players, including a goal.
Yeah, but you said the word good GM. I agree with that, yes.
You're such an asshole. Fucking hell.
Oh, someone's actually shouting me through the window.
Are we alright?
Yeah, no, fine. Those guys are 100% going to crash.
Excellent.
No, I'm mostly just messing you a bit. But I think to his point,
this
is the sort of thing. Like it's testing the game to see. Well, I mean, this is only my own opinion, of course. But it's like you're testing to see what outcomes exist, and you choose the one that you think is most appropriate for what you want. I guess that's how some people are safe scaling, right?
So I think there's a difference. I think, between your example from earlier, where you click on an option and your character behaves not in the expected way, and you go, "Oh no, that's not what I meant when I clicked that button." And because at that point, in a tabletop role-playing game, I would have said to you, before we rolled any dice or anything like that, well, obviously, if you say that, your character knows that that's a wildly offensive thing to say about someone's grandmother, and you'd probably start a fight in this bar, and you'd go, "Ooh, no, that's not what I meant." That's different.
Well, but you can say it and then still style it out as well, right? Because it's organic. But yeah, that's exactly the point. Yeah,
that is different from I failed that stealth check, reload. I think that's his point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But if
that is, I think, where.
But I don't think that has anything to do with that. It's not a role-playing game. That's literally just people not liking the dice mechanic. But then, frankly, go and play literally any other game.
Go and play Skyrim.
Like if part of the story is dependent on sheer luck, then you have to live with that.
I think I agree with you there.
It's why there's a bit in Act 1 where I sort of. I didn't want to kill everyone in a particular area, but because I rolled badly, everyone aggroed, and I was like, "Well, this is now just what we're gonna have to deal with, isn't it?" And everyone died.
It's not my fault. You should have all not seen me. Does that bring us neatly, in the short amount of time left to us, onto karmic dice?
Karmic dice, yes. So I guess that's the developer's way of saying, we don't want it to just be sheer luck.
Yeah. I think it's the developers recognizing fundamentally they're not building a randomness generator, they're building a video game.
Yeah.
But I think, so I find all this game design side of things really, really interesting. So there's all the stories about how enemies work in BioShock, or how bullets and shields work in Halo, or how the actual 2 hit percentages work in XCOM, which is just always just the developers putting their thumbs on the scales to make sure that the player actually has an enjoyable gameplay experience. And actually, this is a conversation I've had with, again, our mutual friend about AI in video games, and people complaining that AI in video games isn't good enough. And his point, which I think was very well made, was that people don't actually want good AI in video games. What they want is AI that makes them feel smart. So they want an AI that's just good enough that when they beat it, they go, "Oh, I beat it because I'm good," rather than, "Oh, I beat it because this AI was not programmed to be Napoleon."
Yeah.
Which I think is a good point that often gets missed in AI conversations. Like,
so frustrating, isn't it?
You don't want a good AI.
Yeah.
You want an AI that makes you feel good because you're not Napoleon. Napoleon was always his example, which I think is a really good one. None of us are Napoleon. Napoleon was a singular individual, right?
Like, imagine if AI in Total War was actually like artificial intelligence and sort of grew to recognize your tactics. No one would make it past 5 turns.
No, of course not. You know, you've got people like Legend of Total War complaining that he's able to cheese the AI. It's like, yeah, because the AI is not designed to be able to turn off your cheese. The AI is designed specifically to appeal to your average player on a sliding scale.
Yeah.
Like, it just is. Like, sure, if you take 2 lords into a settlement and run around in circles, you can confuse the AI such that you can win without taking any losses. Cool. Was that fun for you? Because
I hope it was fun for him, because it's all he ever does.
But like, most people play Total War games so that they can have 2 lines of fighters clash and send people up the walls and defend the walls and all of that.
No, most people auto-resolve.
Actually, no, that's true. Most people auto-resolve. That is actually statistically true.
I know, I do. You just auto-resolve. But if I'm ever in a battle that I can't auto-resolve, I know I fucked up tactically.
Ooh, I get a decisive victory here. I will take that.
I'm going to lose half my army, but it saves me from having to fight the battle. Oh, I'll do it.
but like, this is the frustration that I have specifically with Legend of Total War. We're just talking about video games again now. But like, yeah, sure. If you do things that the AI is not expecting you to do, because no sane player would spend 20 minutes fighting one battle, or 2 hours in his case, I've seen him do. Cool. Well done.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm not shocked that CA didn't program the AI to not do that, because that would have been a huge waste of resources, because you're the only person in the world doing that. And if you can be bothered to do that, more power to you.
Yeah, and I think he's mentioned this in the past. Like, you know, CA have designed their AI that there is some cheese, and they know about all the cheese, and sometimes they patch it out, sometimes they don't. So they give you the option as a player, right? If you want to cheese the settlement fights in a particular way, then go right ahead, do it.
Yeah. It's the difference between they don't patch out cheese like that, but they did patch out the backspace cheese.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, because that was just wrong. You shouldn't be able to do that. That's just cheating.
Yeah.
I actually think it was probably fine to leave in. I don't think it was as big a deal as people said it was, because it was an option. It was an opt-in mechanic.
You can always just not press the button.
Always just don't press it if you don't want to. But it's
a bit like save skimming, to be fair. Like, you don't. No one forces you to, right? So the fact that you can, I guess, it
doesn't do any harm.
The karmic dice are weird. So
it's an opt-in mechanic.
It's an opt-in. Well, actually, it's an opt-out mechanic. So I think it was switched on by default, which is the thing that threw me, because I thought it wouldn't have been. But as like rolling so high all the time, it's really hot.
I think it makes sense to be switched on by default, because it's a gameplay improving mechanic. It's something that the developers have put in to make the gameplay experience better.
I'd like them to draw more attention to it, though. As in, like, you know, by the way, these are the 2 options of how we throw dice in this game. It's on by default because it's potentially a quality of life thing.
I think it should be a. When you do your first skill check, I think it should pop up and say, just so you know, karmic dice are on.
Exactly.
Click here to turn them off, or you can always turn it off in the settings.
Because I only knew about them because I watched the Quill stream ahead of playing it myself.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I think not knowing wouldn't have been bad. Like, it just changes the way the dice works. But it's hard to understand really how it does it.
It's just a soft waiting on the randomizer, as far as I can tell.
But it only kicks in if you've had a particular set of one-sided results.
You have to have a run of failures, not bad dice rolls, but specifically failures. And then it just slowly shunts up your likelihood of getting.
Oh, I thought it also went the other way around, that if you kept rolling like 20s,
I think it does also.
It would like.
I think it does also work the other way around.
But at that point, I'm like, just have it be completely random.
But the argument there is true. People don't want true randomness. They want the illusion of true randomness, because on true randomness, you can get 8 nat 20s in a row, or 8 nat 1s in a row, and that doesn't feel good. And so
but the thing is that there's enough dice. Yeah. No, of course you can do that.
The whole weighting, you can. It's unlikely, but the problem with true randomness is that it can happen. And so the whole idea behind karmic dice is to weight it so that you get the illusion of true randomness while actually getting a positive gameplay experience. XCOM does the same thing. XCOM does the same thing. You will, if you have a run of misses, eventually you get an auto success. The game doesn't tell you it's doing it. It's not at a specific moment, so you can't game it. But eventually XCOM just forces you to hit.
Yeah.
Because it's not fun to miss every 99% shot, even though it's statistically possible to do so.
Yeah. But this is something that's a patch, right, from the early access. Because if
Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, Baldur's Gate. Because if your character had like a really high armor class, the enemies would keep missing, and then because karmic dice was on, they'd essentially just start critting you all the time.
Yeah, it was forcing crits.
Yeah.
So no, only the player gets it, I think. Is that right?
Is that right? I don't know.
I think that's right. I think that was the patch. Or it can't force a enemy crit, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe
I don't know.
That's
I just like having it off because that's ultimately how D&D works, right? If
I
I miss every single Eldritch Blast I ever fired, that's literally just what being a warlock is.
I leave it on because I'm playing a video game. That's the thing. I think these.
See, I find that such a weird distinction. Why though? Like, why does it matter if it's a video game versus a tabletop game for the luck?
Because I think. I don't really know. I think people roll too many dice in general in role-playing games, so that's probably part of it. But I don't know.
Yeah, that probably depends on the GM, I suspect.
It does. It probably does depend on the GM. I don't know why, because I also don't fudge dice, so I roll all my dice out in the open, or as much as openly as it's possible to do. So just when I'm rolling dice, the dice land where they may. So I don't really know, other than when I'm playing a video game, this is another conversation we had before in relation to open world RPGs, but like I want a curated experience. I want the developers to build what they think is the best video game experience. And part of that in Baldur's Gate 3 is karmic dice, as far as I can tell. That's why it's automatically on.
Yeah, it's interesting. See, because again, there I'd say that's probably a GM mindset. Because as a GM, I guess that's what you're trying to do, like curate. But then you also say that you roll the dice in the open, which you do. That's kind of
it's really weird.
That's really kind of counterintuitive.
I actually think that's a fairness thing. As I think about it, I think that's a player-facing fairness thing. I think that's the difference. When you pick up the dice, when anyone picks up a dice in D&D, in a game that I'm running, at that point, it's about to be perfectly fair.
Yeah.
That, I think, is a difference.
I think that's true.
In a video game, I don't want it to be perfectly fair.
Yeah. But it's the same as the dialogue thing, right? This is an interpretation. If you're playing D&D, you're not playing on your own. Like, so you will have party. So simple things is, let's all do an investigation check. Like, you'll have one person that fails, one that passes, and then some in the middle, probably. And that's fine, but if it's a game, because you're controlling a party, but you're playing as one character ultimately. And then, you do sort of want that extra hand. And again, because it's like one check in the game's code just moves on to the next bit if you fail or pass. Whereas in a real game, there's discourse again. Right?
There's no reacting to the check.
Exactly, yeah. So, because I failed this, I'd like to maybe,
But I also just find these things fascinating, the little things that developers do to improve the experience. My favourite example is always the Halo. It's either Halo or Bioshock. I can't decide which my favourite one is. So in Bioshock, the enemies always miss their first shot. Always. It's hard-coded into the game.
Mm-hmm.
Which I just think is such a neat little thing. Because if the enemies didn't hard-code miss their first shot, you could be sniped off the map. You could just die without ever knowing the enemy was there. And that's not fun. So the devs went, no, we don't want that.
There's a big debate in Rainbow Six Siege as well, actually. Like that headshots are insta-kill, yeah. It really annoys some people because it can be complete fluke, right? Like someone shoots you from 5 walls.
Yeah, but I think it works in Siege because it's player versus player.
Perhaps. But there's enough
But-
like random bullshit that an element of
I-
fudging in video games makes a lot of sense. There's an
Yeah.
episode there, I think.
I think so. Because it just counterpoint. Well, it's not counterpoint, but like a further point. The last bar of your shield in Halo has more health than all the other bars, and the last bullet in your gun in Halo does more damage than all the other bullets in your gun. And again, that's because the feel of that the developers worked out was worth screwing around with the maths. So I just find those things really interesting, and that I think is another reason why I'm in favour of Karmic Dice, because I think these little things that developers do to make video games better they work.
No, it'd be nice to sort of see the maths behind it. Because this is my issue with them, is that because there's some like trickery, I don't trust it.
Yeah, that's fair. If you don't understand,
I'd rather consign
happening.
myself to complete fate, and just have a D20 literally roll one way or another. We all know the D20s are too swingy, so
they are too swingy. That's true. Oh, sorry, I'm just getting an angry email from my favourite RPG blogger for having said that.
3d6 all the way, right?
3d6. It's all, no, d6 is a two swingy. It's the only dice that you can roll is a d100. The least swingy of all the dice.
Yeah, of course.
So, do you have any closing thoughts on Baldur's Gate 3?
No, I just want to apologise to all the GMs who are listening. I like to poke fun at Sean for being a GM. I don't really know why.
Yeah. There's a lot of GMs in our Discord server.
I know. I hate you all. No, I find it really fascinating. And at one point, I do want to sort of write all these thoughts down. But like the way that D&D and other tabletop RPGs work, it's such an interesting player dynamic, right? Because one of the players is not a player, but he is a player.
Yes.
Like it's so strange. It's a whole thing that I haven't quite got my head around yet.
I think the most useful thing that was ever said to me on this was GMs are not players. They're not playing the game. They're part of the game engine.
Yeah.
And when that clicked for me, it completely changed the way I look at running games.
Yeah. No, and I fundamentally sort of get that, but equally, you'll tell your wife,
I'm still sitting down to be social with 4 friends. Yeah,
exactly.
I'm still sitting down at a gaming table to be involved in a game. I sort of feel like I am a player. I'm just playing a different game or something.
That's it. Like it's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I think it is. And I do think so. My closing thought on Baldur's Gate 3, I think that it's a phenomenal example of what you can do if you have a passion project. But I think the lack of a human GM means it's not a patch on playing tabletop role playing game. It's just not. But it might be the next best thing.
I agree. I think that there is no replacement for just getting a group of mates together and sitting down to play a game of 5th edition or whatever
whatever your RPG of choice is.
Yeah, exactly. No, I agree with that. But well done, Larian. It's a great game.
Yeah.
If you're listening.
And if you're, because it's not an episode of Expertise of Overrated if I'm not at some point controversial. If you're a game dev and your reaction to Baldur's Gate 3 is to come out and be shitty to Larian because they made a good game, sort yourself out.
Have a word with yourself.
What is wrong with you?
Have an absolute word with yourself, yeah. Looking at you, Ubisoft, and the likes.
Oh, you've ruined gaming. No, Ubisoft.
You can't be expecting this kind of quality. Okay, sure. Here's my £80 for your shitty broken game.
Yeah, way to just admit that you're not going to take any lessons from it. Oh, Mirage is going to be so shit.
Man, I really...
And everyone's going to buy it. This is the frustrating thing. I'm going to buy it. I know I'm going to buy Mirage, and I don't want to.
I'm already consigned to it. That to me is the ultimate developer versus publisher problem.
Ubisoft.
Well, the people who make Assassin's Creed specifically, because like they put so much effort into the history teams and like doing all the lore and stuff, and then
the games are so shit.
And then they're just like, you have to release it tomorrow, but they're like, it's not finished. Like, we don't care. Get it out.
We have quarterly results to hit.
Exactly. Crunch until it's done.
Yeah.
Well done, Larian. It's a great game. Well done to all your GMs out there. I hate you all for reasons I don't understand, but I do.
You're jealous.
Jealous. Maybe that's literally it. I wish I was as creative as all of you. But no, I think at that point, all I can do is thank everyone for listening to this episode of Expertise is Overrated. No doubt we've said some things that were either objectively wrong or downright offensive. As ever, feel free to let us know, rate the podcast and leave us a comment, or drop us an email at expertiseisoverrated@gmail.com, tweet us at ZeroExpertise, check out our website, expertiseisoverrated.podbean.com, or come join us on our Discord server.
If you're lucky, we might just argue with you in one of our upcoming episodes. And if you're really lucky, we might call you an idiot. Come back next time for some more absolute nonsense.